Here we go again, and we continue our quest through the d3 lines. This video we're going to be looking at the move 5d3, which is closely related to the line we just saw with castles, bishop e7 and 6d3, but it still has a lot of differences which we should look at first for understanding. The first obvious point is that here bishop e7 is not a very good move, because then bishop takes c6, d takes c, and knight takes e5 just wins the pawn. So please don't go bishop e7 just because we always did it against castles. But pay attention not to lose a pawn. d3 covers e4 and therefore introduces a threat. Second important point is that after b5, bishop b3, if we try to play bishop e7 here, aiming to transpose to the lines we just saw after d6, after castles d6, white has a more unpleasant move than castles. He can start with a4, and if we remember, after castles d6 we had the move bishop d7 in reply to a4, but this is not available here. So black has to go either b4, which I still don't like for the reasons given in the other video, that it gives white some extra flexibility that he doesn't deserve, or rook b8. And after rook b8 we again end up in this unpleasant situation after takes, knight c3 or castles. And that the plan of knight d5 leaves our queen side a bit exposed and we might end up under some pressure. So that is the reason why I can't recommend the same treatment with b5 bishop e7 like in the other line, and we have to look for other options. One line is the move d6, which is quite popular in practice. I've never really liked this move, but that's mainly a matter of taste, and it's a fully playable setup for black. After c3 he can play g6, planning to go bishop g7 and castles, or even play bishop e7 here and then castle. And these positions are fully playable, but I don't really like them, like I said, because they seem a bit passive to me. And also allowing the move c3 when the bishop is still on a4 always gives white the extra option of going bishop c2. Another move is the move bishop c5, which I've played myself. This is a very decent move, attempting not to weaken the queenside and indirectly defending the pawn, because bishop c6, dc, knight e5 is not a very good idea after queen d4. But I still have some complaints about it. First of all, the point I just mentioned, that after c3 the bishop can retreat to c2 immediately. And I'm also not a huge fan of the positions arising after bishop c6, d takes c, bishop e3. I've had a recent game in that where I played bishop d6, black is forced to lose a tempo with the bishop or take on e3, but I'm not so sure about that structure here. And while I do think that theoretically black should be fine, I'm not a fan of allowing this option for white if there's no need for it. So, having said all these things, we finally come to my main recommendation, which is the move b5 after all, but after bishop b3, I think we should seize the chance to put the bishop on c5 and not on e7. c5 is in general a more active square. Of course, in the Spanish there's many lines after castles. There's also the line b5, bishop b3, bishop c5 that are very complicated and not part of our repertoire, because we want to play, or I want to play the marshal putting the bishop on e7. But the thing is that all the lines that are critical against bishop c5 normally involve a quick c3 and d4. And here that the white pawn is already committed to d3, these approaches are no longer available. So I do think this is a very good moment to switch setups and go for b5, bishop c5. There have been a lot of games in practice, and white's main approach is to go for either a4 or knight c3, intending to create some play in the center and on the queen side quickly, because the normal plan with c3 and d4 is no longer available to him. Of course c3 is playable here, but then after d6 black is just doing very well, because the pawn can no longer go to d4 in one step.